Hi, my name is John Daniel, and I teach the trumpet at Lawrence University in the Conservatory of Music in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I've written a book, A Trumpet Method. I call it Special Studies for Trumpet. And you can find it on johndanieltrumpet.com. And I'm teaching a series of short lessons from my book, materials from my book. And I tried to focus, when I wrote this book, on little things we can do to improve our playing that are a little bit out of the norm that you're not going to find in other method books. And one of the techniques that a couple of pedagogues have mentioned, but not really gotten into in any depth, has been the concept of breath articulations, or starting a note with just the air and the embouchure without tonguing. So if you just take a simple note and practice starting it without tonguing, you can get a variety of effects. And if you've never worked on it, you might get a variety without intending to. But one of the things I like to do is to be able to get what I would call a who articulation. So the note just begins, but it doesn't have any particular ping to the front end of it. So if you're playing something lyrical and the lyrics are a vowel, like say Ave Maria, we don't want it to sound like Tave Maria. So typically a trumpet player, even playing Ave Maria, would go, and it doesn't immediately remind you of the words because of that T at the front of the note. So if you can something like that, then right away you're starting with a vowel sound. So it's one of the practical reasons for working on breath attacks. Another reason for working on breath attacks has to do with what happens when we tongue. We tend to use the tongue to make the lips vibrate. Sometimes people will even do something like that to force the lips to vibrate. And that's why the first note of phrases tends to be harsh and overly accented. Trumpet is one of the most percussive instruments in the orchestra, in any ensemble, and sometimes that's the effect that's wanted, but not always. And so the breath attacks are a means of ensuring that our embouchure is in the best position. And sometimes when we tongue, we're covering up the fact that we're not in the best position. So I would go through a series of breath attacks in all the registers. So and with that breath attack, I was simply trying to get the note to begin with a very gentle front end, more of a who, not really a poo. If I wanted more articulation from the beginning of the note, I would make a little bit more of a P. Something like that. So when you add your tongue to a note that's already clearly articulated with a P, then you don't have to tongue nearly so hard, and it's not nearly so disruptive to the way you play the trumpet. So I like that, and we'll talk about that more in another lesson. So with breath attacks, there's a number of things you can do. All the notes, for one thing, and all the dynamics. So if you're playing louder and softer, those are good things to practice on in all the registers, and make sure that you can do that without adding tension. So if your tendency is to get tighter physically, and maybe in your throat and your shoulders as you go higher, a good exercise would be to go from a note where you don't do that, alternating with notes where you tend to do that. So you could do an ascending scale alternating with the root. typically somewhere around this area of the trumpet players start to tense up and worry about the notes. So this is a way of checking. Okay, I'm all chilled out now. If I sense tension in my neck, in my throat, the back of my neck, my shoulder blades, then I would just work on that interval for a while until I develop more confidence, is really what it amounts to. And you can use this to work on difficult intervals. Like if we had to slur those intervals, octave slurs are particularly challenging on the trumpet. If you practice them breath attacked first, then it helps you identify the exact position your lips should be in and the exact amount of tension that's required. So I would just breath attack each note, keep them separate, and then get rid of the separation, connecting the two breath attacks with the note. And it creates a very smooth slur. And you can do this in all the registers. Until everything comes out really clean and clear. My name is John Daniel. I'm teaching out of my book, Special Studies for Trumpet. You can find it at johndanieltrumpet.com.